Greetings, viewers.
And not-so-viewers.
If you're just listening, that's okay.
It is.
I'm Ian.
I'm Steve.
We are creating an RPG called Downbelow. We are doing it one question at a time through these videos. The RPG in question is a cyberpunk setting, sort of sci-fi, sort of dystopian, sort of not dystopian, but it's a work in progress, and I do mainly the system part of the game.
And I do a lot of the story and character design of the game.
So, today we bring you another question.
So, today we're asking about marrying story and system.
Mm-hmm.
One of the core tenets of our system is that, in many ways, a success is a success. We've talked before about applying consequences. We've talked before about draining multiple successes if the traits used are inappropriate. But really, up to this point, a success is a success.
Mm.
So, here's my question as a designer and a game master.
Mm-hmm.
When designing challenges and running a game, how does one vary it up and differentiate it so that it doesn't fall into, well, as a popular video put it, if that solution doesn't work, use more gun.
Mm.
How does one break free of the apply same solution, face consequences, apply same solution again cycle that so many cover-based shooters and modern RPGs fall into? That is my question for you today.
Okay, so the idea here is that you have to use your words. You have to describe things, and you have to understand that there is not a strong demarcation between system and narrative in this game, because the system is using narrative resources. The successes that we refer to are your character gets what your character wants. And failures are your character does not get what your character wants, and maybe something that your character actively does not want to happen happens.
They're not some arbitrary, did your percentage meet the arbitrarily designed difficult percentage of the check.
Right, and regardless of what system involved, this is not a simulationist, does your bullet go through the man? This is, if you were shooting your gun because you want to escape unharmed, this is, does your success that you used your gun skill for get you out of this situation unharmed? But if what you wanted was to drop the man, then your success will represent, does your gun skill drop the man? It is very much about what you want, and also about whether the skill you are using is appropriate to the situation. And describing those situations so that people can figure out whether appropriateness is, in fact, a thing here, whether the skill can be used, that's the GM's job. So you have to use the senses, you have to engage people's understanding of what is going on in the scene, and you have to relate it to things they know, relate it to those skills on their sheet. Sometimes you should use those words explicitly. Sometimes as a GM you should specifically say, this seems like a situation where you could do something like this because of this, this, and this. You should give them suggestions sometimes. So, in some examples, if you want to describe a car chase, then you should describe how the people that they want to catch up with, because the players have told you they want to catch up with these characters, are getting into a car and driving off, and how the player character's car is right there, and so maybe they could give chase. But if they wanted to give chase, it would require a success at giving chase with the car, and do they have any other solutions that they think might be more appropriate to their situation? And you can tell them whether their solution is more or less appropriate, what they could succeed at using that skill. In a counterexample, in the other direction, let's say you have players who want to get certain information, and player A says, what if I use my computer skill to hack and get into a computer system to try and get this information? And player B says, what if I use my politics skill to ask around with political contacts and try and get this information. And player C says, what if I intimidate this guy who we have kidnapped with my gun to try to get this information? And depending on the situation, you, the GM, can describe which of these successes will get them what information. And depending on the situation, one of those might be better than the others, or they all might be equally good. It might be that they've kidnapped a particularly important person, and so intimidating this person with a gun actually works. It might be that they've kidnapped a peon, and intimidating this person with a gun isn't going to get them any information, so they can't actually use that skill to get any relevant information, and so that would actually represent a failure if they went with that course of action. And so you as the GM have to decide this, and then you have to engage their senses in the description so they can tell, am I succeeding or failing? And you explicitly tell them whether they mark off a success. And you make it different by saying, well, you threaten this guy, and he bears his soul, and he's a completely useless, low-level grunt who all he can tell you is that he was hired for $50 to come try to beat you up.
Making this a bit different than traditional dice-based random determination, whereas in a typical game you can literally try anything, and if you roll well enough for a defined value of well enough, it's successful. Here it's actually a lot easier to plan for what players can encounter based on what they have. If they have a finite pool of successes and a finite pool of traits to fuel those successes, you are aware of what those traits are and can plan out what will be useful in certain situations.
So while in any game you can tell that player A has a computer skill and player B has a politics skill and player C has a gun skill, in most games you have to plan for a wide range of possibilities. But in this game it's actually a little simpler because you know that once they've used those traits, they will have to fail at something before they can succeed at them again. And you know that they will be trying to use those traits.
And just like in Red, if Bruce Willis is very, very good at intimidating people and shooting them, but you need Helen Mirren to talk them down from a burning building.
And just like in Red, we're out of time because we've come to the end of our runtime, and that movie didn't last forever, nor do our videos. So we'll come back to you again tomorrow.